Hey y'all, I hope we're doing well, staying safe and healthy. I want to go ahead and take a few moments to walk us through the Annotated Bibliography project. Let's go ahead and first break the phrase Annotated Bibliography apart. That will help us better understand what this is. So to annotate, as we know, is to take notes on something. So just as we would annotate a text, the way we do that is by underlining ideas that stand out to us as interesting, important, or confusing, jotting things down in the margins, so connections to other ideas or other texts that we've encountered, questions that we might have, pointing out areas that maybe don't make sense to us, all of that stuff that helps us better understand whatever it is that we're reading or analyzing. Now, a bibliography, if we break the word apart, bibliography, so those of you who might be familiar with Spanish would recognize this biblio as book, right? Biblioteca means library. That's where the word Bible comes from, book. So if we break that apart, a bibliography is just a collection of publication information. So in other words, like a works cited page. So annotated bibliography, when we put those two things together, we're annotating, taking notes on a bibliography, the collection of sources that we're using in a given research project. So let me go ahead and read through this. An important component of a research project is the annotated bibliography. Annotated bibliographies challenge us to read and assess our sources critically, evaluating both their content and merit. Additionally, because the research process takes considerable time and effort, annotated bibliographies can help us keep on track with our research timelines. Because this project is designed to help us gather sources for Major Essay Project 2, the sources you include in your annotated bibliography should all center on a single topic or issue. So there are 4 components for a given entry in an annotated bibliography. And I'll show you guys some examples to see what an entry looks like, what that is. But there are 4 components. The first one is the correct and complete bibliographic information for your source. And this will be formatted according to MLA guidelines, and it will look exactly the way it would look on a normal works cited page. So that's how you would do that component. The next component, though, is a brief summary of the source, and that will be around 5 to 7 sentences wherein the writer details what the source contains, explains what its argument and supporting points are, or offers a description of the source if it does not have an explicit argument. For example, if it's a research report or piece of research data, it may not have an explicit argument. So it might be just a presentation of findings from an experiment, and in which case there's not a clear argument. It's just, here's all the data we found. And so you would just describe what that data is. But many of the sources, or probably most of the sources you find, will have some kind of argument, meaning there's some kind of point that the writer's trying to get across. So what you would include in your summary is just what that point is and how the writer supports it. What sort of supporting evidence or details does the writer include? The third component is an assessment or evaluation of the source's quality, and that will be approximately 3 to 5 sentences. How valuable is the source? You'll want to explain that. Why is this idea or these points within that source valuable? Does the source have limitations? In some cases, maybe the writer didn't adequately address a particular issue or question, or didn't include specific evidence that you think would have helped. So then that might be something that you'd point out. But really, you're assessing the source's value. And chances are, if you're spending your time analyzing the source, you probably think it is valuable. So in most cases, you're going to point out what the source does well. What does the writer include that you think is valuable? Why is it valuable? And the fourth component is a brief but detailed explanation of how the source fits into the overall research project. So this doesn't need to be more than a few sentences. How will it relate to your other sources, or how does it relate to your other sources? How do you plan to use it in your project? Or what might it add to your exploration? Now, in some cases, we may not necessarily know how we're going to use it in our project, but we might have some ideas. So this is just your chance to point out how you think it would fit into the overall research project. So those are the 4 components for a given entry. Now let me read the rest of this. You should provide annotations for 3 sources, 2 of which must be from the library databases. Now I'm going to post some resources for you guys that will explain those library databases. So hang tight there, but you'll have 3 sources in total, and 2 of them should come from the online databases. You could have all 3 come from the online databases if you'd like, but at least 2. Each annotation should be at least 250 words in length, and that's to ensure that you're being thorough enough to make sure that you've actually read the source carefully, you have a pretty good understanding of what that source is, and you're being specific in the way that you're summarizing it, assessing the source's quality, and indicating how it fits in the bigger research project. MLA guidelines apply. However, you do not need to double space your annotated bibliography. So single space will be fine for this particular project. And the reason for that is to save space, and I think it looks nicer actually if it's not double space. So this is an instance where you don't need to double space. Now I've included a link to a brief reading from a book called Everyone's an Author. So if you click on that link, it'll take you to just a PDF of the short reading. So you kind of scroll down to where it says Annotated Bibliography or Annotating a Bibliography. A few paragraphs, they offer characteristic features, continues over here, and then they provide an annotated bibliography entry from a student so you can kind of see what it looks like. Now I've also included an annotated bibliography entry that I created, so let me go ahead and take a look at that. So we can click on this and it will pull this up. Now you'll notice that I've put this in different colors. I color coded it only to show the distinction between the 4 components. You do not need to color code it. Just black font is fine. You don't need to use colors. I only did that to show the distinction. So you notice that we have our normal MLA heading. So you have your name or the writer's name, professor's name, which class it is, and then the date that it is due. And then directly underneath that we have the title for the annotated bibliography. In this case I called mine Failing Forward because that's what this hypothetical research project deals with: learning from failure, growth mindset, all those things that we began the semester with. And you'll recognize this phrase failing forward as coming from Kevin Kelly's The Virtues of Negative Results. And that's why I put it in quotation marks, because it's a direct quote from that source. Colon and then annotated bibliography. So that's how you would do it. You develop your own title, of course, but the subtitle you just call it annotated bibliography. So then in the first component of this entry is the complete bibliographic information for this source according to MLA guidelines, just as it would look on a normal works cited page. And then immediately under that I have my paragraph where I'm offering a brief but detailed summary of this source. So I talk about what the main point of this particular source is, how the writers support it, some key details there. Directly under that I have my assessment of the source. So this is where I'm pointing out what the source does well, and then I also point out a limitation that I think the source has that I think that the writers could have focused on a little bit. And then finally I have a brief indication of how I plan to use this. So you can see I am pointing out a connection to another source, and then I'm pointing out how I plan to incorporate this particular source into my overall research project. So this is what an entry would look like for one source. This is for one source here. Now all of this right here should be at least 250 words in length. You can go over that, but at least 250 words, again, to make sure that you're being specific with your summary, you're showing that you've read the source carefully, you understand what it's getting at, and you're including specific details there. Now in the end, this will be beneficial for you when you're working on the essay itself, because if you think about it, you've already kind of summarized the source, you've pointed out some things that the source can offer, and then you're indicating here to yourself how it fits together. So this is, in a sense, kind of like brainstorming in a way. You're organizing your ideas, putting these pieces together. So this is due Sunday, May 3rd via Turnitin by 11:59. So you'll submit it through Turnitin just as we've been doing with all of our other projects. but you'll submit that by Sunday, May 3rd. Alright, I'll post another video where I walk you through some student examples.